With us now, and she has a question for you. Would you know what to do if someone had an epileptic seizure in front of you?
Yeah, more than a third of us say we wouldn't know the steps to take that could save a life. But with today being International Epilepsy Day, Dr. Zoe says it's a perfect opportunity to learn. Good morning,
Good morning.
Zoe. This is a great idea. First of all, can we start off? What exactly is epilepsy?
Yes, so epilepsy, so first of all, the brain is full of brain cells, and the way that those brain cells communicate with each other is by sending messages, chemical messages, and that creates electricity in the brain. So a seizure happens when there's a burst of abnormal electrical activity in the brain, and that affects the signals that the brain sends then to the rest of the body. Okay. So anybody can actually have a one-off seizure. We all are capable of having a seizure if we hit a certain threshold that we have these abnormal bursts of electricity, but some people are more prone than others. And if people have repeated seizures, then it's called epilepsy. It's a long-term condition. Okay. Some people, it resolves and get better, but for many people, it becomes a lifelong condition.
How many people are affected in the UK?
It's fairly common, probably more than most people think. So 1 in 100 people. Yeah. So that's 630,000 people in the UK, and 80 people are diagnosed every day. So it's fairly common. We will probably all know somebody in our wider circle who has epilepsy.
And are there certain situations that can bring on an attack?
Like, can you develop it as well?
Yeah, like if you're in a situation, then you know that in the back of your mind you should keep a lookout.
So triggers, yeah. So, I mean, it tends to first present either in children or in people over the age of 60, but it can occur at any time. And I think the trigger that people are aware of is flashing lights.
Yes.
And I know here on the show, when we're certainly going to awards events and what have you, and there are lots of cameras, it's all tested so that it doesn't trigger epilepsy.
And we put warnings out as well, don't we? Yeah, you see that more and more.
Absolutely. So people tend to be aware, but that's actually quite a rare trigger. More common triggers are things like stress, not having enough sleep, excitement, drinking too much alcohol, certain drugs. So there are lots of more everyday things. So people who have epilepsy, certainly as part of their care, they'll start to try and identify what the triggers are and avoid them.
Sense them coming. Can we develop it, though? I mean, so you're saying that actually all of us are susceptible, potentially, to having one of these fits. Is it something that's hereditary? How does it work? So in quite a significant number of people who have epilepsy, we don't know why. There's no specific cause. There are some genetic predispositions to it, and it can sometimes run in families. It can occur as a result of a head injury or a stroke. It can occur if people have had certain types of infections that have affected the brain as well. So sometimes there is a known cause, but often, actually, there isn't.
I think there are so many myths surrounding it as well. It was like when I was reading through the notes, and I thought people could bite their tongue and you had to, like, clear an airway, but that's not the case.
So there are lots of myths.
Yes,
so one of the myths is swallowing the tongue.
Yes.
Which is not possible. You can't swallow your tongue, so that's a myth.
So where's that come from, though? Why do we think that that's the case?
I'm not sure, and there used to be this old-fashioned idea, please don't do this, anybody, where you should put something in the person's mouth to stop them swallowing their tongue, but don't do that. That's more likely to cause injury. People can bite their tongue. That is something that people can do. I think one of the commonest myths is that when we see people having a seizure on TV, it tends to be what we call a tonic-clonic seizure. So you tend to see the person go quite rigid, lose consciousness, and then tend to have some sort of jerking movement.
Convulsing,
but there are over 60 different types of seizures. That's just one type, and about 1 in 4 people will have those types of seizures. There are many other types. So sometimes in children, we see something called an absence seizure, and this is when the teacher might be asking them a question and they don't respond. They're sort of just looking into space for a few seconds, or somebody might throw a ball at them and they don't pick it up.
So that could be a seizure?
That can be a seizure. Wow. There are seizures called myoclonic seizures, where it's just one part of the body moves. So sometimes this can be dismissed as being clumsy if a child keeps dropping things or somebody keeps spilling their tea, whereas actually that can be a form of epilepsy as well. Depending on where the seizure, this electrical impulse originates in the brain, it can be motor, so that affects your movements. It can be sensory, so people might experience pain or tingling or numbness, and that can be a seizure. It can affect the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's involved in emotions. So somebody might have outbursts of crying or laughing or severe panic, and that can be a seizure. So I think that's the biggest myth, is that people think an epileptic seizure is
it's always that one thing we've always
of losing
what you see in
consciousness
dramas.
and rigidity, whereas actually that's only in one of 4 cases. So
Okay.
I think the epilepsy community, that is the message I think they would want me to say more than anything else, is that there are many different ways in which seizures can present.
Now, if somebody happened to have a seizure and we would be there, I'm not sure I would necessarily know what to do.
No,
but you're
I
going to give
wouldn't.
us a demonstration, aren't you, so
Yes,
we do know.
so Fleur is going to come in.
Morning, Fleur.
Morning, Fleur. Thank you so much. She's going to lie next to me. So, Epilepsy Action, the UK charity, have developed this first aid protocol for somebody having a seizure so that everybody knows what to do. It's really straightforward. You just have to remember the word care. C-A-R-E. So if you approach somebody who's had a seizure, the first thing you want to do is see, and that's comfort. So you want to pop a pillow, if you happen to have one, under their head to support their head and neck and make sure they're comfortable.
So, sorry, Dr. Zoe, if she was convulsing now, would you still do the same thing? You wouldn't wait for her to go still?
No.
Okay.
So, you know, as long as it's safe for you to approach, if they're making very big movements and it doesn't feel safe, you don't need to. But if they're making movements, then yes. So C is for comfort.
Amazing.
A is for action. And this is where you've got 5 minutes here to think about the things that are sensible to do. So I'm going to ask you, Kat, to set a 5-minute timer on your phone and let me know if it reaches 5 minutes.
OK, I'll ask my assistant to
Right,
set
I'm on
5 minutes.
Yeah, OK.
So the next thing, I want to make sure she's safe. I'm not going to move her, but there may be things around her. There may be glass, there may be furniture. So I'm going to move that over there a little bit.
Amazing.
So that if she moves, to think about her being safe. I'm going to have a look for any medical bracelets or any ID cards, because that might give me further instructions. Somebody with epilepsy might carry that.
Do they normally, or is it like 90% of time they have one of those?
I'm actually not sure. It's sort of down to the person. It might be whether or not they need specific actions to be taken.
Gotcha.
So have a look in their wallet as well, or ask Ben. I'm going to ask you to have a look in Fleur's bag and see if you can find any
Oh,
ID.
I'd love to look around in Fleur's bag. There's all sorts
Use
in
a
there.
lip gloss, but you can look for a
And
card.
this is when you might start panicking, thinking, somebody do something, but actually you're just supporting this person, making sure they're safe.
Yeah.
Next is R. So if Fleur starts coming round, really important to reassure her. It's all right, Fleur, you've had a seizure, but you're fine. I'm here, I'm staying with you. It's only been 2 minutes, so you just rest, stay relaxed, stay calm, everything's OK. And then the third one is E, and that's when is it an emergency? If it's the first seizure, if it's lasted more than 5 minutes, if they're having repeated seizures, or if she's not breathing properly when she's come round, or she's injured herself in any way, then we're going to call 999 without delay.
I think that's so good to set the timer, because when all this is going on, you completely lose track of time, don't you?
It's a long time.
It is a long time,
yeah.
We're
Going
just
on,
at
you'll
3
feel like
minutes
it's
now,
ages.
so there's still 3 minutes left.
So it's care, C-A-R-E. Thank you so much, Fleur.
OK. And then when they do come around, do you give them a drink of water?
Yeah, so they'll often just let them wake up gradually and slowly and keep them safe. If they can manage a sip of water safely, that's absolutely fine.
OK.
And just take good care of them.
Okay.
Amazing. Zoe, thank you.
That's brilliant.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Undoubtedly, we'll help some people.
Yes, for sure. And busted some myths as well. Thanks, Fleur.
Thank you, Fleur.